Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Football's here. Fall invaders are on their way. Box elder bugs, stink bugs, ladybugs. They all want to get in your home for the winter. Have a nice warm winter in there. Lay their eggs. Give you a nice greeting come spring when there's millions of little ladybugs in your windowsills. Trust me, I used to deal with that until I got the fall invader treatment from Southeast Termite and Pest Control. You can too. SoutheastTermite.com to learn more. The Haynes family's been doing this for more than 50 years. Fantastic business right here in East Tennessee. Southeast Termite and Pest Control. All right, and now we welcome in the guy who I noticed Marlon isn't here today. Marlon, who debated with you pretty hard about the pass rush. Yeah. He ducked out. Daniel Hood, congratulations. You looked like the wisest man in the room after last week when you said, don't worry about the pass rush. They weren't trying to do anything. Daniel, thanks for being here.
Not to brag too much, I have a few more state championships than Marlon in the coaching realm. So don't tell him that.
Zinger! All right. I want to talk to you guys about the offensive line, but let me start by putting up some numbers to get this thing going. First of all, not a great day yesterday. 32 rush attempts for 106 yards. That's when you take the sacks out of it. Averaged only 3.3 yards per rush attempt. If you look at the raw numbers and include sacks, it was 2.6 yards per carry. 27 of 42 passing, 325 yards, 7.7 yards per pass attempt. That's good, but 3 sacks allowed. Only minus 15 yards, but 3 sacks, not good. And Hooker was pressured for a lot of dropbacks other than that. 416 yards of total offense, which seems small for a Josh Heupel team, to only 415 by Pitt, a team that had its backup quarterback in there. So not a great day on the offensive line point. Looking back last year, Pro Football Focus grades these teams, so take that with however much salt you want to throw in there. But last year, their pass blocking ranking had Tennessee number 110 out of 130 schools. There were only 5 Power 5 teams worse in pass blocking. There were only 10 Power 5 teams worse than them in run blocking last year, according to Pro Football Focus. So that's a concern. And now we got one more graphic here just showing you the drive chart from yesterday. You had the 3 straight touchdowns, but boy, look at that second half. Punt, punt block, fumble, field goal, punt, and there was a muff punt that killed the drive in there. Then you got another touchdown in overtime. Just a kind of a sputtering might be the best way to put it. Not a great day for the offense. Daniel, how concerned are you about the offensive line? You were wise last week in trying to tell us all, don't worry about the pass rush. How concerned are you with the offensive line?
I would say I'm kind of medium right now. You know, with the stats that we put out last week about the rush per attempt for Ball State, there's obviously some issues where they need to get that number up. But with the sacks, Pitt's incredible at getting sacks. They've given up a ton of yards on pass attempts, but in terms of sacks, they led the ACC, I think, for the last 2 seasons on that. We have to show growth in that the rush attempt category, or the rushing yards per attempt. But they got on a plane, they went to Pittsburgh, they got a win and came back. There was multiple years we never had that happen. And so I don't want to buy completely into it right now because they still got on a plane and got a win.
Yeah. Jimmy, went into this season and everyone looked at it and said, well, the biggest position of worry is the secondary. Is that still your biggest position of worry, or is the offensive line moved to the top of that?
The offensive line is not moved to the top of it. I don't think it's a huge concern because I didn't think the offensive line was that good last year. Here's what I see. I see an offense with that up-tempo that masks the fact that, in my opinion, that Tennessee has a mediocre offensive line. And I think they'll have a mediocre offensive line this year. Now, what hurt them a lot last year was they had trouble converting on third and short, right? Because they're not a very physical line. But I think that the way this up-tempo, what Tennessee does, you don't have to have a great offensive line. They set a school record last year in scoring points with what I thought was a mediocre line. And by the way,
what Pro Football Focus would say was a terrible offensive line.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a huge issue. And I'll differ a little bit from Chuck on this one. You need to spread it because I think the more you spread it, the easier it is for this offensive line. If you start converging and you ask this offensive line to be more physical and just beat people one-on-one, that's going to defeat your purpose, I think, of running that offense. So I'm not that concerned about the offensive line because I think the up-tempo offense overcomes that.
All right. These guys tell you Don't worry about the offensive line. Very good. And now we've got them on record for that. When you do well, I come back and praise you. And if the offensive line stinks versus Florida, I'm going to scald you.
I'm
Against Akron, you got the Akron.
No,
all right. Yeah,
one game at a
you
time.
feel good about Akron.
Yeah.
All right. I tell you what, we do a segment, speaking of Chuck, we do a segment each week called Odds and Trends. And here's the first thing I'm going to throw at Chuck I thought was interesting. Now, the Vols covered against Ball State earlier this year from the MAC. They covered the over-under, but in the last 9 games against MAC teams, they are only 3-6 versus the spread, only 4-5 with the over, or 5-4 with the over/under. So not great against the MAC. Chuck, do you put any kind of credence into those numbers or no?
Oh yeah, I mean that's very surprising to me, John. I mean when you've got 9 wins against teams from that conference, the MAC, and you look at the time frame of doing that. That's why gambling gets to be so tough, guys. You're 9-0 straight up. Against the spread, you're only 3-6. So, I mean, that's what happens a lot. And I say the best thing Tennessee and some other programs can look at is to stay away from the Sun Belt. The MAC has got teams you can beat. Remember, wasn't this supposed to be Army? And now you're getting
this week, yeah.
So, I mean, I think that really plays into Tennessee building some momentum here. You look at this game, I think we could just go back and look at what I had from Ball State. Tennessee should score at least 45. I think it's probably going to be 52, might even be 59. And you're looking at an Akron team that this guy shut out at Michigan State, 52-0. In that game, they gave up 6 rushing touchdowns. So now they got to turn around and come here. So what's the Cavaliers line going to be? I'm still putting those numbers together. John, I'm going to call the boys in the desert and get the inside lowdown on this game. So stay tuned when we come back for the Beat the House segment later in the show.
All right, very good. Nice job, Chuck. When we come back, Beat the House is coming up, obviously, but we're going to talk a little bit about the play calling. You can't argue much with Tennessee's play calling when the offense does what they do. But are there issues late in tight games? We'll look at Purdue. We'll look at yesterday. There were some things that kind of raised my eyebrow. We'll see if anybody else agrees. That's next. Come on back on the Sports Source.